Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.Buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome back to the Innova.Buzz podcast today a repeat guest from Castaways Beach on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia, Tom Poland, who's the best-selling author of the Leadsology series of books and also the book Marketing with Webinars. So welcome back to the Innova.Buzz podcast, Tom. It's a great privilege to have you here again.
Thanks, Jürgen. Pleasure to be here, and great to see you arrive back safe from your globe-trotting adventures.
We're back into recording podcasts again. We had lots queued up and lots ready to publish while we're away, which was fabulous. Why we've got you back. So you were a guest previously on episode 446, where we talked about creating and marketing and delivering engaging webinars. And I know one of the things that came up there was this idea of other people's networks, because I remember writing down at the time OPM, and I thought that's actually a brilliant concept. And the reason you're back on the show is that you're about to publish a new book. Early November it's launching, which is entitled Get Quality New Clients for Free from Other People's Networks. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you about that. Before we get into the details of that, what inspired you to write a book about specifically that idea of the other people's networks?
Well, first of all, I seem to have to write, so I'm going to be writing something because it's just in me, and probably every 2 years I feel like I'm pregnant with a concept that needs to be given birth. So it's of great benefit to me to articulate exactly how I think a thing works through writing it, and the process of having to lay it out clearly for someone else helps me to get very clear about what it is as well. So there's that. I have to write something. It's just in me, and it's going to come out. And it's generally the thing that I've been developing and thinking about and playing with and testing and measuring. In this case, this has been a long gestation period because I started messing around with OPM back in 1995. So, I've used it in lots of different businesses and lots of different mediums. But essentially, the reason I think it's really important to get the book out there is that there's an extraordinary, ubiquitous misinformation about marketing and how it can work and how it should work and how it does work. And I've found over the decades now that this concept of getting new clients without financial costs in a relatively, compared to other methods, relatively simple manner is kind of the unsung hero of the marketing world. A lot of people have heard of OPT, other people's time. You can leverage your own time by hiring freelancers or employees or getting licensees to do a lot of the work for you. OPM, other people's money. Robert Kiyosaki made that go viral, basically, using other people's money to leverage your investments in property specifically. Yeah. But, I've always had this fascination with other people's networks, OPN, and how we could leverage our marketing. It's really at scale. Leverage simply means I have to do less work, but I get a better result proportionally. It's scale meaning bulk, if you like, not one-to-one anymore, but one-to-many groups. So, and if the success of the marketing webinars, that book and the program that's associated with it, if you took the OPN concept out of that, there wouldn't be anything, because webinars need audiences. And the best sorts of audiences are people who have email lists with the same target market as one of our listeners, for example. That just brings back to the listener. So let's say you've got one of the listeners as a business coach, and their target market are small business owners or solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, whatever we're going to call them. And someone else has got an email list full of those people. Then that's a good example of OPM. So I want to get really specific, really fast, get from the concept of generating leads through other people's networks to probably the best OPN, the best type of OPN, because you've got LinkedIn's an OPN, Facebook's an OPN, TikTok's an OPN, Instagram's an OPN. There are OPN communities with business networking groups in your neighborhood. There's lots of different humans hanging out in groups, right? And that's what we're referring to as a network. But the best one is someone's got an email list. They're targeting the same target market as you. And so we have all these people that are sitting there having registered an interest in growing the business or whatever it happens to be. And if you know how to get into that email list ethically and legally and effectively, then it's
one of the things you touched on many of the social media platforms there, and it's kind of very common. You see it all the time where somebody will be promoting an event or a product or a book on social media, and people within their network will take up that post and repost it and make some comment towards it. Like Tom's just published this new book and I highly recommend everybody reads it. So that would be me promoting it to my network on that social media. That's really common. What you're doing is taking that concept and taking it into the email marketing space, right? In a way that you have the conversation with the person who owns the list first and provide them the resources to promote it.
Yeah, I think what those two mediums have in common, which is the recommendation or repost or a retweet or LinkedIn endorsing someone else's new book, etc. What they both have in common is the potential of the power of the referral. So there's someone whose opinion I respect, have recommended someone else's book or someone else's event. So there's a transference from the referrer, in this case you, to the person who's being referred, the person who's running the event. So that's a lot of credibility. So there's that in OPN. Someone sends an email out to the list saying, Jürgen's running an event and I've worked with Jürgen, I know it's good stuff, you should go and get there. It's the same principle. We use tapping into the power of the psychology of a referral from a respected source. But I think that's where it really ends, because what you get from someone sending an email out to their list of 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 50,000 people in terms of results is light years ahead of the sort of result you get when you get a retweet or a repost of a blog comment or a LinkedIn endorsement, etc. We're talking about hundreds of people in the case of an email list recommendation, potentially hundreds of people, quite often hundreds of people opting into that event or that free book or whatever else when it's done by an email promotion versus less than a handful, if any, when it's done on social media. And if we want to know why there is such a significant response, there's a couple of answers. But my thing about when you're marketing services or advice, people need a first date before you propose marriage. So you can, a lot of people go, and that's why we run events, and that's why we have books, and that's why we have free downloads and quizzes, so that people can dip their toe in the water of our brand and hopefully learn to trust us and respect our opinion, etc. And that all happens before we propose that they talk about work together as client in a client relationship, or it happens before we offer them to join our program or whatever it is we're wanting them to buy. So that concept of the first date is fundamentally important. If you accept that people who don't know you from a bar of soap are going to need to sample your brand and need to have a sample of what it's like, could be like to working with you before you propose that they work with you. If you accept that as the basic premise, then you go, well, what's the best way for them to have a first date with me? And I liken it, a webinar event or a physical event is kind of like, in terms of first dates, it's like dinner out in the town. If someone accepts your invitation for a first date as dinner out in the town, they probably have at least they're putting some skin in the game and saying, well, I want to get to know you a little better, so you've got a chance of that, versus say a 2-minute speed date where there's no skin in the game. The maximum exposure to you, if you're a horrible person, is going to be 2 minutes and then moving to the next table. So that's like social media. It's like a LinkedIn repost or a reblog, or it's just too short an opportunity. So that's one reason why getting people interested in what you've got from social media is not nearly as powerful as someone sending a solo email out to their whole entire email list saying, hey, here's a heads up, Jürgen's running an event, or Tom's running an event, or whoever's running an event, or you've got a free book or whatever, you should go and get it. And we're talking the differences, as I said, between in social media context, typically less than a handful of responses to
Yeah.
hundreds of responses.
Yeah, and the other
So
thing,
that's
I
just
think people kind of have, I think people have underestimated over the last few years the power of email marketing, and also they're moving away from social media in terms of always being there and always paying attention to what's going on there. And I've got a classic example, a client of mine, and this is a webinar, right? A client of mine, I was chatting to her yesterday to review where we're at with the program we're running for her. And she's running a webinar on something else next week. And she said, I don't know whether you saw that, but I'm running this webinar. And I said, no, I didn't get any emails. I didn't see that. And, oh, we promoted it on Facebook. and I said, oh, I hardly ever go on Facebook. So why don't you send out an email to the list? Because I'm on your list.
Well, right. So, and there's another, unpacking that a bit further, talking about the efficacy of email marketing. With everything in marketing and life, I guess, it pays us to segment that a bit. So email marketing is very different buying a cold email list and sending an email out to people who've never heard you from bar of soap and didn't join that list for anything related to what you do, versus a respected referrer sending a solo email out going, I heard that Jürgen's got an event on and I know his stuff is really good and here's what he's going to unpack during the event. Both are email marketing, but one is they've already had the first date with the person who owns the email list. They're still sticking around for more good stuff. So the cold email, don't bother. Really, if you're going to put effort into marketing, chances are your time is important to you. Chances are your energy is a finite resource, which hopefully gets renewed every day, but still it's finite. So let's put that into the 20% of the market that's going to give you the 80% of the result, and not faff around with, really what is probably could potentially be 97% of the marketing to give you 3% of the result. So it's all about, and there's another really important thing I need to unpack when we talk about, say, buying a cold email list versus someone, a referrer, a respected referrer versus social media. And it literally took me decades to figure this out. And I think it's in the new book. I unpack it more in the new book, but it's really worth mentioning now. You can do someone even with an email list can promote you, and it can be absolutely flat as a pancake. They can be a respected authority. They can have a big email list. They can have a highly engaged email list, and let's say they promote my webinar on lead generation. And it's absolutely, why did it fall flat? And it scratched my head around this, and I got part of the answer, and I got another part of the answer. But I needed to be able to articulate the difference between someone successfully promoting my stuff, you listen to stuff, versus someone else who you just scratch your head afterwards going, it just didn't work. Why didn't it work? What did we miss? And I can sum it up in one word. And that's the benefit of writing a book about this stuff, is my mind is forced to distill the articulation of this particular thing as simply and easily as possible. So the one word is reason. If you look at all the networks, whether it's a TikTok, whether it's a LinkedIn group, whether it's a local business network, physical meeting, a conference, a trade show, someone's email list, a cold email list, there are people all over the planet. You might have noticed, there's like 7 or 8 billion or something, hard to keep up. So again, this idea of segmenting, when we distill it down, to have a successful OPN promotion where someone else has got an email list, OPN, other people's networks, and they're targeting the same target market as you, in order for that promotion to be successful, the reason that someone joined that email list or a network has to be the same or similar reason as to why they might buy from you. And this is, getting this wrong is the death knell of any campaign. Now, if you look at what is the reason why people join TikTok, entertainment, have a laugh. They don't join TikTok to learn about lead generation. And so me running a TikTok campaign to get people to buy my book or on marketing or to come to a webinar on marketing, there's no alignment of reason. And then if you look at, let's say, I use the example of Tony Robbins, who's an extraordinary personal development guru, set goals, get wealthier, have better relationships and so on. And some of his stuff's outstanding. And Tony's just an extraordinary individual. So if he said to me, Tom, you've got a marketing webinar coming up, we'll send an email blast out to our list. I would, with full respect, I'd say, thanks, Tony, but it's probably going to be a waste of our time and your email list capacity and everything else. And the reason is that people join Tony's list to achieve goals and to be a better version of themselves and to step up and all those really, really great things.
That's right.
But they don't join this list to learn about lead generation or marketing. And so that's where the whole thing will fall down. Now, probably, in the case of Tony, he's probably got a list of 500.
If you got 0.5%, you'd still be
deficiencies,
ahead,
sheer weight of numbers.
But that comes back to one of the things I was curious about: how you build relationships with people to get to tap into those other people networks. And one of the things you've said there is there's a huge list there, and you probably will get some results. But are you making a withdrawal from that relationship bank, assuming you've got a relationship there? Yeah. Well,
that begs the question: how do you get the relationship in the first place? Because most of our listeners are going to be going, "I would love to get into that game," and but how do I get into the game? How do I establish a relationship with someone who has an email list that's got my ideal clients in them? And those people have joined for a reason which is aligned to the reason they might want to buy for me. So, maybe I'm a weight loss coach and somebody's got an email list with talking about physical health and well-being and diet, nutrition, and everything else. That's a really good example of an email list where subscribers have joined for a reason which they might buy from me as the weight loss coach. Okay. So there's a couple of things to unpack there. We talked before about with our prospects, the need to give them the opportunity for that first date with us, in the form of coming to a webinar or an event or buying a book or whatever else, before we propose that we talk about working together or joining programs or something. So that concept of needing to give our target market a first date before we propose marriage, so to speak, also applies to our potential OPM marketing partners. We need to create an opportunity where they get to know us to the point where we can establish what I call the 4 R's of psychological reciprocity. Or psychological allure, I should say. And those 4 R's are rapport. So we can somehow we can figure out that there was a click, that we can get on with each other. Respect for each other's professional ability, capability, delivering on the promise of whatever our promise is, whether it's weight loss or better relationships or better marketing. So you've got rapport, respect, relatability, where we can demonstrate that we know where people are at and where they want to get to, and finally reciprocity, which is the most powerful, in my view, it's the most powerful and the most hidden and the most unspoken about force in marketing. Reciprocity simply means, as humans, we like to kind of keep the emotional bank account balance even. So we get invited to dinner, we have to take something because otherwise we feel bad. They're doing all this nice dinner for us, we haven't taken a bottle of wine, a bottle of chocolate, and so on. In the world of marketing, we can take someone, a potential OPM partner, over a bridge from not knowing us to the other side of that river, if you like, or the canyon, to where they not only know us, but they like us and they trust us and they want to do something to help us. So how do we invoke reciprocity? The easiest and simplest way to do that is to do exactly what you've just done, which is invite them onto your podcast.
Yeah.
Because now you're in a meeting, which is effectively like a first date. So we run a podcast that's called Marketing Invisible. You've been on it. Maybe it's how we met. I can't remember. But I find that having someone on a podcast ticks a whole lot of boxes. A lot of people in our target market who are actively marketing want to come onto a podcast. They're actively looking for a podcast to be on. So when one of my team members sends an email invite out to them saying, "Hey, we've got a show, we'd like to come on Tom's show," they go, "Hell yes," because they quite rightly believe it's not a bad thing to do for marketing, get their name out there and so on. So when they come onto my show, I'm giving them an opportunity to give voice to their message. I'm providing them with already my market, with our YouTube channel, with our Twitter feed, with our email list, wherever. We'll sprinkle around the internet like confetti at a wedding. So they're going to accept the invitation, and this is the foundational underlying principle of all good marketing: is we're giving people an offer we think they're already looking for. So it's very different to selling, which is trying to convince people they should be looking for our offer. So first of all, you set up a podcast, which is relatively simple and easy to do these days. Basically, you go to YouTube, sign up for free, start your own channel, and put the interviews there. I mean, it can be as simple as that, and then do a call like this and record it and upload it. That's podcast done. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. So we set up the podcast. We invite. We've identified someone very easily. Google search will do it very quickly. You type in a description of your target market, say small business or stay-at-home mum or whatever your target market is, or stay-at-home dad for that matter, whatever your target market is. Then you put in the name of the medium through which you want to do your marketing: webinar, downloadable guide, free event, whatever. And then a description of your wheelhouse. So there's three things we're putting in: description of the target market, a description of the medium through which you do your marketing, webinar, book, whatever, and then a description of your specialty, so lead gen or whatever else. So now we've got thousands of hits, people that are targeting the same target market as you, through the same medium as you, with a reason, a motivation, which is similar to what you do. Bingo. Now we've found thousands of people who are actively marketing into your target market with the reason aligned to everything else. So then what do you do? Well, if you email them and say, hey, we should do a joint venture, or do you want to promote my free webinar? You're not going to hear from them because you haven't offered them a first date. So the podcast becomes the first date. We identified them. There's a whole lot to unpack, but we don't have time to do that. You identified them, you invited them onto the podcast, you've recorded the podcast, and so you've invoked reciprocity. Having finished the podcast interview, it's simply a matter of saying, hey, you're going to notice we're targeting the same target market, and you wait for your guest to go, yeah, I noticed that too. Do you want to have a conversation about how we might be able to grow each other's email lists? And I know they want to have that conversation. 99% of them want to have that conversation. So they lean forward and their eyes open. They go, yeah? What do you got in mind? Or they lean forward and go, hell yeah. Because all we've done is we've given someone an offer that we're pretty sure they're already looking for. Good marketing. And from there, we set a time to do date and cross marketing. And the next question that's going to come up from listeners are going, don't have a podcast. I think I've addressed that. Just get a YouTube channel. Do it nice and simple to start with. So that's that taken care of. I don't have an email list, right? That's the next one that comes up. Well, you do. There might be 8 people in it, but you do. So start with people that have small email lists. And because what happens is once you do a cross promotion with someone, and you start small, start with a small. I mean, I literally started with an email list of eight clients because I'd sold a business and couldn't use that email list. I had to start again. So I had 8 clients, so they became the email list foundation. So what happens is you just start. You just create a webinar. May not be perfect. You start with a downloadable guide. You start with a quiz. You start with any one of the mediums through which you can offer people that first date. And you start. And then once you cross marketing, you do a debrief meeting with that OPM partner who's promoted your stuff and you've promoted them. And you go, was it good for you? Because if it wasn't good for you, I'll keep going until you get something that's been worthwhile for you. But having confirmed that the cross promotion was worthwhile, you then refer each other to people who will want to do the same thing. So one source, therefore, in conclusion, one source of our OPM partners, and we've had, I think, we've over 600 partners in the last 3 years. So one source of them comes from podcasts. We always want to have fresh partners coming in. But the bulk of our partners now come from those debrief and referral meetings we have after we've done a cross promotion. And so we don't have to invite those people to a podcast because we've got to, by reason of the power of referral, we've basically done the first date. Yeah, and so we just invite them straight to a meeting. And sometimes we don't even have a meeting these days. We just say, hey, we like your stuff. We've checked you out. Here's our stuff. We have a page called ourpartnerpage.com. People can go and check it out. We set up basically a sales page for prospective partners to go and check us out and to read testimonials from past partners, to download samples of what we offer to other people's networks. It's all there on one page.
There is a lot.
You want to unpack
there.
All that? I know it's thrown a lot.
Comes back. I mean, picking up on the idea of the podcast as the first date. It's we're getting up to. I think this is going to be episode 590. Let me check my notes here. 595. So we're coming up to 600. And incredible. I always say that there's two things about my podcast that I've learnt over that almost 600 episodes. The first thing is it's an easy way to get a meeting with anyone that I'd like to talk to. And pretty much, of course, I focus on people that I'm interested in, and that there are various bits of alignment as you've outlined. And so, there's usually a reason for them to talk to me. And it's a fantastic way to grow my network, because usually I'm introduced to other people through that. And the third thing is I learn a lot by it. So for those people that think, well, if I start a podcast, what happens if my list doesn't grow, or if I don't get on this? I'd come back to your point and say, just start, and keep in mind that you're going to learn a hell of a lot by speaking to people. And if you were to approach people, I mean, how often have you been approached to say, can I buy you a coffee and pick your brain? Because I'd like to learn more about webinars, Tom. I want to find out how you do webinars, and I'm interested in doing them myself. I want to learn about that. How often has somebody approached you with that sort of manner? And usually the response, if you approach others like that, is, no thanks, I'm busy. Whereas, because it's a take relationship, right? It's, yes, I'm going to buy you a coffee, but I'm taking your time. I'm absorbing your knowledge. Whereas,
it may not be worth the price.
Whereas here I'm offering a platform, and
I mean, I
having that conversation, and in doing that, building the relationship.
I mean, I normally say yes to someone if they're prepared to drive up to where we are, because we're not in a big city, and have a cup of coffee. I normally say, sure, I'll pick your brain.
Yeah.
First hour is free, and after that, it's $1,000 an hour. So milk me for whatever you can. But I'll tell you right now, ideas, it's a good starting point, but to implement, you're going to have to pay us some money, because you're going to need a hand to implement. Some people might think, well, that's a bit cynical, but it's just reality. The reality is that idea is not the implementation. Map's not the territory. The theory is not the reality. And it's just so hard to get this right on your own. That's why we have, the best sports people in the world have coaches. They have people to guide them through. They have trainers. They have managers. They get help. We don't represent ourselves in court. We hire a lawyer because they know what they're doing. They help us through the situation. And it's the same with building anything in a business. Whatever your budget is, just spend whatever you can to get the help you need. If all you've got is $30 to buy a book, then by all means, buy the book. Do that. Get the free stuff. But as soon as you can stretch to hiring someone to help you, then you should do so, because you're going to save yourself a lot of grief. You get someone like you, Jürgen, who's been doing what you've been doing probably for the thick end of 30 or 35 years. People, when they work with you, can save themselves an awful lot of frustration and disappointment. The other thing I'd like to add to that, in almost a summary, is you've got to find a strategy that you believe rationally and logically is going to work well. Find someone you trust and find out what they're doing strategically, and keep at it until you make it work. Far too many people, it's a cliche, I know, but it's true. Far too many people join a program, get a coach, believe they've got the right strategy, they've seen the evidence to indicate that this could work really well for them, and then have a crack at it, and just because their bank account's not overflowing with money on the first time, they're just going find another strategy. And there is a time when you need to know when to hold and know when to fold. Of course, you can't just keep pouring good money after bad. But mostly what I see is people just going and chasing another shiny thing, and not doing the hard work of implementation. But once you if you have a webinar marketing system and you have it down pat, it's really easy to keep it running and running pretty well. But it's hard work getting it up and running. So, I liken it to getting a train from point A to point B. The hard part about that is nothing to do with the train, it's laying down the tracks. So you lay down the marketing systems and you iron out the wrinkles in that track, and you get all the sleepers in a row, and then it's pretty easy. But it's hard work up till that point. A lot of people have to make the decision. They want something quick, simple, and unpredictable, such as going to a business networking meeting and handing out business cards. You might get lucky. Or do you want to do the hard work and have something that's pretty
and I think, it's a really important point. I think a lot of people these days still see entrepreneurship as a quick way to make a lot of money, whereas the truth is it's actually hard work, and you do need some guidance. There are those of us, as you say, I've been around for quite some time and have made lots of mistakes, and I've put my hand up and say I didn't always follow this philosophy either. However, at some point I learned, hey, there's a better way to do this, and saving other people or saving yourself a lot of mistakes by essentially learning from the mistakes other people have made so that you don't have to repeat them is certainly a good way to shortcut. Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds like a fabulous call to action there to wrap us up. But before we do conclude, I do want to make sure that listeners know, and I think there's actually a way that they can get a free PDF copy of the book. So why don't you go ahead and tell us how they can do that?
Yeah. Okay. So there's when COVID hit a couple of years back, I read a book called Marketing with Webinars, because I knew all the physical events weren't going to be happening for a while. And it became a bestseller real quick. And there's a PDF copy you can grab it and get Tom's free book. GetTom'sFreeBook.com. Go get it. It's free, obviously. Get Tom's free book. And inside there, once you download that, you'll probably get an invite to one of our monthly webinars where we take it off the pages of the book and put it into life on a big screen. I run those at the moment. I run those live, so there's an opportunity to come in. And
as you say, this is something that I learned from you in our last podcast conversation, that you actually run those live. So a lot of people run these webinars and they have them recorded. You run them live, which means that the audience if you participate in one of those webinars, you actually get to ask Tom questions live. So you don't have to post your questions and wait for an email response at some point. You actually get to ask Tom live and get a live response.
And I think too many people go into evergreen, the replay type webinar too soon. I run it live, because it keeps me sharp. It keeps me at the coalface, answering questions, continuing to improve, hopefully. Second reason is it's once a month. It's an hour of my time once a month, and we have maybe 8 or 10 partners emailing and promoting it. So it's really worth getting up for that. And I think also for people who are looking to get into running events live, online, you don't want to move to evergreen until you've got the thing converting well, because there's no point in automating something that's not working.
Yes, so I think that's something for everyone to keep in mind. I mean, in these days, you did early on. I was, as you were saying, I'm driven to write. I was thinking ChatGPT. It's sort of front of mind a lot of times, and I thought, well, a lot of people are looking. Hey, can we automate something using ChatGPT? Can we automate something using other AI technology or something? Well, get it working first. Actually, physically get it working. Lay the tracks, lay the sleepers, and get it working, and then we'll talk about automation. So, really important point. All right, Tom. Well,
Yeah.
We will include those links in the show notes, of course, so people can click straight through and get that free copy of the book. And of course, you'll learn more about the launch of the new book as well by participating in those webinars. And I'm sure that you'll keep people informed once they're in that ecosystem in their list. Yeah.
We will indeed. You can count on it.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for being back on the
Okay,
show. And
thanks for having me on the show.
All the best.
Cheers.